In the vast tapestry of life that adorns our planet, there are threads that are fraying and some that have been severed forever. Among the most iconic and powerful of these are the rhinoceroses. These magnificent armored giants, survivors of a prehistoric age, now stand on the precipice of oblivion. For millions of years, they have roamed the continents, shaping the landscapes they inhabit. Yet in the blink of a geological eye, their numbers have plummeted, and entire species have vanished from the face of the earth, their passing marked only by silence. This is not merely a story of loss, it is a critical examination of our own impact on the natural world. Understanding the fate of these rhinos, both those recently lost and those teetering on the brink, is of paramount importance. Their stories are a stark warning, a reflection of the pressures we exert on our planet's delicate ecosystems. The urgency cannot be overstated. We are living through a period of immense change, and the decisions we make now will determine whether future generations will know these creatures from living, breathing reality, or only from pictures and digital archives. Join me as we journey through time and across continents to witness the last stand of the great rhinos. We will explore the stories of species pushed into the shadows of extinction and meet the last of their kind. We will uncover the complex web of causes, from relentless poaching to the silent creep of habitat loss. But we will also discover glimmers of hope, born from human ingenuity and a profound, growing desire to mend what has been broken. This is the story of the rhinoceros, a race against time that we cannot afford to lose. Our journey begins in the heart of Africa, with a story that is both profoundly tragic and a beacon of scientific endeavor. Here we encounter the northern white rhinoceros. It is a subspecies that is, for all intents and purposes, extinct in the wild. The vast savannas and woodlands that once echoed with their heavy footfalls have fallen silent. No longer do these gentle giants shape the vegetation or wallow in the mud baths of their ancestral home. Their wild world has been emptied of their presence, a void left by decades of unrelenting conflict and poaching. The entire future of this ancient lineage now rests upon the shoulders of just two individuals. Their names are Najin and Fatu. They are the last northern white rhinos on Earth, a mother and daughter living under constant 24-hour armed guard at the Olpeheta Conservancy in Kenya. They are living relics, the final fragile connection to a world that has disappeared around them. Watching them graze, one feels an overwhelming sense of finality. They carry the genetic legacy of millennia, yet they cannot reproduce naturally. The last male, Sudan, passed away in 2018, his death marking the end of any hope for a natural revival. But where nature's path has ended, human ingenuity has forged a new, audacious one. A global consortium of scientists and conservationists, under the banner of the Biorescue Project, has embarked on an unprecedented mission. They are racing against time, using the most advanced assisted reproduction technologies ever applied to wildlife conservation. It is a remarkable undertaking, a fusion of veterinary science, stem cell research, and cryogenics. The goal is nothing short of resurrection. The process is incredibly complex and fraught with challenges. Oocytes, or egg cells, are painstakingly harvested from Najin and Fatu in delicate, high-risk procedures. These precious cells are then flown to a specialized laboratory in Italy. There, they are matured and fertilized in vitro using frozen sperm collected from the last northern white rhino males before their deaths. This is the very frontier of science, creating viable embryos from individuals separated by time and distance, a microscopic spark of life held in a petri dish. These embryos, tiny frozen packages of hope, are the potential beginning of a new generation. They represent the culmination of years of research and international collaboration. The team has successfully created over 24 northern white rhino embryos, now preserved in liquid nitrogen, awaiting the next critical step. This is a testament to what is possible when humanity pools its resources and knowledge for a single noble cause. The next hurdle is perhaps the greatest of all: finding a surrogate mother. Since Najin and Fatu are unable to carry a pregnancy to term, the embryos must be transferred into a closely related subspecies, the southern white rhinoceros. This has never been successfully accomplished before. It requires perfect timing, hormonal synchronization, and a deep understanding of rhino reproductive biology. The chosen southern white females will become the unlikely vessels for the northern white's survival. The team has conducted countless trials, refining their techniques and learning from every attempt. They have achieved successful embryo transfers in southern whites using southern white embryos, a crucial proof of concept that has brought them one step closer to their ultimate goal. Each small victory is a monumental leap forward in this high-stakes biological rescue mission. It is a story of persistence against seemingly insurmountable odds. The weight of expectation is immense. The fate of an entire subspecies hangs in the balance, dependent on these delicate procedures and the resilience of the animals themselves. If successful, it would not only be a landmark achievement in conservation, but would also redefine what is possible in bringing a species back from the very edge of extinction. It is a future, written in a genetic code, waiting to be born. We now turn to a story whose final chapter has already been written, a somber tale of a battle that was lost. The western black rhinoceros, a distinct subspecies that once roamed the savannas of West Central Africa, is no more. In 2011, the International Union for Conservation of Nature, the IUCN, officially declared it extinct. Its disappearance was not a sudden cataclysm, but a slow, painful erosion, a death by 1,000 cuts inflicted over decades. The primary architect of its demise was poaching. The demand for rhino horn in traditional medicine and as a status symbol fueled a relentless slaughter. Throughout the 20th century, its populations were decimated. In the 1980s, it was estimated that only a few hundred remained. By the turn of the millennium, that number had dwindled to a mere handful, scattered across the northern regions of Cameroon, their last known refuge. Conservation efforts, though well-intentioned, were tragically insufficient to turn the tide. The vastness of the rhino's habitat and persistent political instability in the region made effective protection incredibly difficult. Anti-poaching patrols were underfunded and outgunned by sophisticated, organized criminal syndicates. The rhinos were ghosts in their own land, hunted relentlessly, with no safe haven to retreat to. The last extensive surveys were conducted in the early 2000s. Field teams scoured the rugged landscapes of Cameroon, searching for any sign, a footprint, a dung pile, a feeding trail, but the forests and savannas remained stubbornly silent. The signs they found were old, the tracks faded. The living, breathing animals seemed to have vanished completely, leaving behind only the echoes of their existence. Despite the lack of sightings, conservationists held onto a sliver of hope for several more years. Perhaps a few individuals had survived, hidden away in some remote, unexplored pocket of wilderness. But as year after year passed with no confirmed evidence, the grim reality became undeniable. The last western black rhino had likely died alone, its passing unrecorded, its genetic line severed forever. The official declaration of extinction in 2011 was a formality, a final, heartbreaking admission of failure. It served as a global wake-up call, a stark illustration of how a large, charismatic mammal could be wiped off the planet while the world watched. The story of the western black rhino is not one of natural decline. It is a direct consequence of human greed and inaction. There are no frozen cells, no vials of sperm in a laboratory to offer a chance of revival for this subspecies. There is no biorescue project for the western black rhino. Its extinction is absolute and irreversible. All that remains are museum specimens, old photographs, and the painful knowledge that we failed to protect it. Its empty niche in the ecosystem is a permanent scar on the African continent. It is a ghost that haunts the conservation community, a reminder of the fragility of life and the immense responsibility we bear. The silence where its powerful snorts once echoed is a testament to a profound and permanent loss, a warning of what could befall other species if we do not learn from the mistakes of the past. Our journey now takes us to Southeast Asia, to the dense, humid jungles of Vietnam. Here, another rhino story reached its tragic conclusion, centered on a single, lonely individual. This is the tale of the Vietnamese Javan rhino, a subspecies of the already critically endangered Javan rhinoceros. For many years, it was thought to be extinct, a casualty of the Vietnam War and subsequent habitat loss. But then, in 1988, a hunter's photograph from the Cat Tien region confirmed the impossible. A small population had clung to existence, hidden deep within the forest. This discovery sparked a wave of excitement and hope. An area of the forest was designated as the Cat Tien National Park in 1992, with the primary goal of protecting these last survivors. It seemed for a moment that this precious remnant could be saved. However, the challenges were immense. The population was estimated to be perilously small, perhaps fewer than 10 individuals. They were confined to a tiny fragment of their former range, surrounded by human settlements and agricultural land. The pressure on the park and its beleaguered rhinos was intense. Protecting such a small, isolated group in a dense jungle environment proved to be an almost impossible task. Despite conservation efforts, evidence of the rhinos became increasingly scarce. Camera traps failed to capture their images, and footprints became a rarity. Scientists and rangers searched desperately, but the forest guarded its secrets well. Genetic analysis of dung samples collected over several years revealed a devastating truth. The population had dwindled to just one solitary animal. One rhino was all that stood between the subspecies and extinction. The fate of this entire lineage rested on this single, unknown individual. It wandered the jungle alone, the last of its kind in Vietnam, its calls unanswered. The desperate hope was that this last rhino was a female, and that perhaps a male could be translocated from the only other remaining Javan rhino population in Ujung Kulon, Indonesia, a logistically nightmarish but theoretically possible lifeline. But that hope was extinguished in April 2010. The body of the last Vietnamese Javan rhino was found. It had been shot, its horn cruelly sawn off. The poacher's bullet was the final brutal act in a long story of decline. With this single act of greed, the subspecies was erased from the planet. Its official extinction was declared in 2011, the same year as the western black rhino. The story is a microcosm of the wider conservation crisis. It highlights the extreme vulnerability of small, isolated populations. Even within a national park, a single poacher was able to undo years of conservation work and seal the fate of an entire subspecies. The loss was not just biological, it was a blow to the national heritage of Vietnam and a stark reminder of the pervasiveness of the illegal wildlife trade. Today, the forests of Cat Tien are quieter. The unique, single horn of the Vietnamese Javan rhino no longer carves paths through the undergrowth. Its story serves as a painful illustration that creating a protected area is not enough. Without comprehensive enforcement, community engagement, and the elimination of demand for illegal products, our most precious wildlife remains in mortal danger. We delve deeper into the past, to a loss that occurred before the age of modern conservation science, a ghost from a bygone era. We speak of the Indian Javan rhino, another subspecies of Rhinoceros sundacus. Its story is shrouded in the mists of history, its extinction so complete that it exists now only in historical records and a few scattered museum specimens. Its fate is a reminder that the crisis facing rhinos is not a new phenomenon. This rhino once commanded a vast territory. Its range stretched across the great floodplains and grasslands of northeast India, through the mangrove forests of the Sundarbans in Bangladesh, and into Burma, now Myanmar. It was a key part of these ecosystems, a mega herbivore shaping the very structure of the forests and grasslands it inhabited. Historical accounts from British colonial officers and hunters describe a formidable, yet elusive creature. However, the 19th and early 20th centuries brought catastrophic change to its world. The expansion of agriculture, particularly tea plantations and rice paddies, relentlessly consumed its habitat. The great grasslands were plowed under and the forests were felled. The rhino was pushed into smaller and more fragmented pockets of wilderness, its world shrinking with each passing year. Alongside this silent destruction of its home came the more direct threat of hunting. It was pursued relentlessly, not just by poachers for its horn, but also by colonial-era sport hunters. Seen as a magnificent trophy, the Indian Javan rhino was hunted with a vigor that its small, scattered populations could not possibly withstand. There were no protected areas, no conservation laws to shield it from this onslaught. By the early 20th century, it had become exceptionally rare. The last credible sightings in its Indian and Bangladeshi heartlands date back to the 1910s and 1920s. It simply faded away, its decline barely noted by the wider world. There was no dramatic last stand, no final individual identified and mourned. It slipped into extinction quietly, a victim of a world that was rapidly changing around it. Its official extinction is a matter of historical record rather than recent declaration. It is presumed to have vanished completely by the mid-20th century at the latest. The lack of a precise date speaks to how little attention was paid to its plight. It disappeared before the conservation movement as we know it today truly began, a silent casualty of human expansion and indifference. The loss of the Indian Javan rhino is a profound one. It represents the erasure of a significant piece of Asia's biodiversity. The Sundarbans, the world's largest mangrove forest, is now missing one of its largest ever inhabitants. The grasslands of Assam, now famous for the greater one-horned rhino, once supported two distinct rhino species. That ecological richness has been permanently diminished. We are left to piece together its story from dusty archives and the bones of long-dead animals. Unlike the northern white rhino, there is no hope of scientific resurrection. Its genetic code is lost to time. The story of the Indian Javan rhino is a historical lesson, a stark example of how habitat loss and unregulated hunting, the two classic drivers of extinction, can eradicate a species before we even have a chance to try and save it. Let us now travel much further back in time, beyond human history, and into the depths of the last ice age. Here we meet a rhino of a very different kind, one adapted not for tropical jungles or warm savannas, but for the bitter cold of a frozen world. This was the woolly rhinoceros, Coelodonta antiquitatis, a contemporary of the woolly mammoth and the saber-toothed cat. This creature was a true icon of the Pleistocene epoch. It was immense, covered in a thick, shaggy coat of reddish-brown fur, with a massive, flattened horn at the front of its snout, likely used to sweep away snow to find the frozen grasses and sedges beneath. Its fossilized remains are found across the vast expanse of the northern hemisphere, from Scotland to Spain, and across the steppes of Siberia to South Korea. For hundreds of thousands of years, the woolly rhino thrived. It was perfectly adapted to the cold, dry environment of the mammoth steppe, a vast ecosystem that no longer exists. Its low-slung head and specialized teeth were ideal for grazing on the tough, low-lying vegetation. It was a powerful and successful animal, a key part of a lost world of ice and wind. But around 10,000 years ago, as the last ice age drew to a close, the woolly rhino disappeared. Its extinction was part of a larger event, the Quaternary extinction event, which saw the demise of most of the world's large mammals. The causes of its disappearance are complex and still debated by scientists, but they center on two major factors: climate change and human pressure. The end of the Ice Age brought about a rapid and dramatic warming of the planet. The glaciers retreated, and the vast, cold, dry mammoth steppe began to disappear. It was replaced by warmer, wetter climates that fostered the growth of dense forests and marshy bogs. This new world was unsuitable for the woolly rhino. Its food source vanished, and its adaptations for the cold became a liability. At the same time, a new and highly intelligent predator was spreading across the globe: modern humans. Our ancestors were skilled hunters, and archaeological evidence, including ancient cave paintings in places like Chauvet Cave in France, shows that they knew the woolly rhino well. They hunted it for its meat, hide, and bones. While humans had coexisted with rhinos for millennia, the added pressure of hunting on a population already stressed by climate change may have been the final push into oblivion. The story of the woolly rhino is different from the others we have explored. It is an extinction on a geological timescale, driven by immense natural forces as well as early human activity. It is not a story of modern poaching or habitat loss in the conventional sense, but a tale of a world changing too quickly for a highly specialized animal to adapt. Yet its story has a fascinating modern postscript. As the permafrost in Siberia thaws due to present-day climate change, remarkably well-preserved carcasses of woolly rhinos are being discovered. These frozen mummies, some with their fur, horns, and even internal organs intact, provide an incredible window into the past. They allow scientists to study their genetics, diet, and biology in unprecedented detail, bringing this Ice Age giant back to life in our laboratories. Our final story takes us to the island of Borneo, to one of the world's oldest rainforests. Here, the smallest of all rhino species, the Sumatran rhinoceros, made its last stand on the island. The Bornean rhino, a subspecies of the Sumatran, is now considered to be functionally extinct in the wild, another casualty in this silent war against a species. The Sumatran rhino is a unique and ancient creature, the closest living relative of the extinct woolly rhino. It is the only rhino in Asia with two horns and is covered in long, reddish-brown hair. The Bornean subspecies was even smaller, adapted to the dense, mountainous forests of the island. For centuries, it lived a secretive life, rarely seen by humans. But the 20th and 21st centuries brought relentless destruction to its home. Widespread logging, The conversion of forests to palm oil plantations and mining operations fragmented its habitat into tiny, isolated pockets. This habitat loss not only reduced the rhinos' available territory, but also made them far more accessible to poachers, who sought their small horns for the illegal market. By the early 2000s, the wild population was thought to be gone. But then, just as in Vietnam, camera traps provided a glimmer of hope, capturing images of a few surviving individuals in the state of Sabah, in Malaysian Borneo. This led to a concerted last-ditch effort to save them, a program known as the Borneo Rhino Alliance, or BORA. The strategy was to capture the last remaining wild rhinos and bring them into a managed breeding program. The challenges were enormous. The rhinos were scattered across rugged, difficult terrain. Capturing them was a dangerous and complex task. The first female, named Tam, was captured in 2008 after wandering into a plantation. A male, Kurtam, was captured a few years later. Hopes were high that this pair could produce offspring and begin to rebuild the population in captivity. Tragically, those hopes were never realized. The rhinos were found to have severe reproductive pathologies, likely a consequence of their long isolation. Despite numerous attempts at natural mating and advanced reproductive assistance, including in vitro fertilization, no pregnancies were achieved. The genetic isolation had taken its toll, rendering the last individuals infertile. It was a cruel, biological twist of fate. In 2019, the story reached its heartbreaking conclusion. Kurtam, the last male, died of old age and illness. A few months later, Iman, the last known female who had been captured in 2014, also passed away. Her death marked the extinction of the Bornean rhino in Malaysia. While there are faint, unconfirmed reports of rhinos on the Indonesian side of Borneo, no concrete evidence has emerged. The subspecies is, for all practical purposes, gone. The story of the Bornean rhino is a lesson in the dangers of waiting too long. By the time intensive conservation efforts began, the population was already too small, too fragmented, and too reproductively compromised to be saved. The efforts of the BORA team were heroic, but they were fighting a battle that had largely been lost decades earlier due to habitat destruction. It is a stark warning that for some species, there is a point of no return. The stories we have witnessed are chapters in a larger, ongoing tragedy. From the frozen steppes of the Ice Age to the modern-day savannas and jungles, the fate of the rhinoceros has been inextricably linked to overwhelming forces. The primary drivers of their recent catastrophic decline are painfully clear, relentless poaching, fueled by an insatiable and illegal demand for their horns, the inexorable loss of their habitats to agriculture and development, and the devastating impact of human conflict, which shatters ecosystems and disrupts conservation efforts. These pressures have pushed ancient species to the very brink, and, as we have seen, over the edge into the abyss of extinction. Yet despair is not a strategy. In the face of this immense loss, a global movement of immense dedication has risen. On the front lines, brave rangers risk their lives daily in anti-poaching patrols. In laboratories, brilliant scientists are pushing the boundaries of what is possible with assisted reproduction, creating embryos from the last of their kind and pioneering techniques to give them a future. Gene banks cryogenically preserve the precious genetic material of threatened species, a vital insurance policy against total loss. And on a larger scale, efforts to protect and restore vast tracts of habitat offer the only long-term hope for wild populations to recover. The future of the world's remaining rhinoceros species, the southern white, the black, the greater one-horned, the Javan, and the Sumatran, hangs in a delicate balance. Their survival is not guaranteed. It will depend on our collective will to act. The fusion of cutting-edge biotechnology with robust on-the-ground protection and international cooperation offers a powerful new toolkit for conservation. The path ahead is difficult, but it is not without hope. We are at a crossroads, and the choice we make now will determine whether the magnificent rhinoceros continues to walk the earth or fades into memory, a legend from a world we failed to protect.